And we are live. Welcome to a really special broadcast we got going on for everyone tonight. We have Breaking Bourbon, we have Seelbach, and we got Penelope Bourbon. And we are going to do a part 1 and 2 series video. Part 1 is going to be a barrel pick, and part 2 is going to be a special blend that we do live to form the first ever Penelope Bourbon blended barrel that's going to be going to the Breaking Bourbon Single Barrel Club members and the Bourbonr Pro members. So we're super excited. My name's Jordan. I'm one of the co-founders of Breaking Bourbon, and I'll let Eric and Nick introduce themselves, and then I'll introduce the other guys too.
I'm Eric.
Hey, buddy. I'm Nick.
And Danny, Mike, why don't you guys introduce yourself? Just say a little bit about the brand too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Mike Palladini. I'm one of the founders of Penelope Bourbon. So Penelope is actually named after my 1.5-year-old. I actually got the bottle here. Maybe you've seen it online or have tried it before. It's got the big gold P. There we go. We started the brand. We're actually fairly new. We started it about a 1.5 years ago. So fairly new to market. And we're going to get probably more into, over the course of the hour, we'll get more into details on the product, but excited to be here with you guys.
Excellent. Welcome. Welcome.
And Danny from Penelope, one of the founders of Penelope, and excited to be here and work through these barrels with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And Blake, I think most people know your face, but why don't you introduce yourself anyways?
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I'll keep it short, I guess. That's the thing of tonight. So I'm Blake from Bourbonr and also Seelbach. Really excited to be here. This will be a lot of fun. I think it's a unique project. And so it'll be cool. It's going to be 2 parts. So we're going to break it down. We're going to pick the barrels tonight. So that's always a fun part, but I think the blending may get even more interesting. So should be fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this will be really, really good. So as we said, this is going to be a 2-part video. The first part is actually Danny and Mike sent us 6 barrels to choose from. And do you guys want to give us a little bit of background on the 6 different barrels we're going to be tasting? And just explain to the viewers then what type of mash bills we're looking at, et cetera, even just like the high level grain that we're going to be looking at and what we're really looking for as we try and go through these samples that you sent us.
Yeah, and Danny, well, I'll have you kind of go through the specifics, and maybe I'll give a little context as how this kind of program kind of came about from our side. So, Penelope Bourbon, it's a blend of 3 different bourbon mash bills, all sourced from MGP. And, as we've been going through this process, we've been getting a lot of folks asking us, oh, can we do barrel pick? Can we pick a barrel of Penelope? And, just given the nature of our product, it's actually 3 different bourbons blended together. Danny and I started talking about this maybe 4 or 5 months ago, thinking about what are fun, creative ways where we could bring the kind of barrel experience, quote unquote, but in the essence and kind of spirit of what Penelope is, blending 3 different bourbons. So, that's kind of how we kind of came up with the idea to do this program. And we're going to be using and blending the 3 core mashes that we use. So Danny, I'll kind of let you kind of talk through those a little bit.
Absolutely. So like Mike said, Penelope Bourbon is made up of 3 different MGP mash bills. One of them is their 99% corn. One of them is the 45% rye. And the other one, or 45% wheat. Another one's the 21% rye. So we thought it'd be exciting to kind of get people involved in what we go through when we're putting together our batches. So we worked with MGP and we kind of rifled through, some of the selections of the mashes that they had, and we picked out an individual batch from each mash bill. So we have 6 different barrels. We have 3 separate mash bills, and we have 2 separate batches from each mash bill. So what we did was we tried to pick out 2 very unique barrels from each mash bill, looking at, trying to get both ends of the spectrum that we deal with during our blending processes, to give you guys the opportunity to kind of choose your flavor and then see how it comes out in your blend of Penelope. So we're excited to go through those and get your thoughts.
Awesome. And I think we're going to start doing that. And you know what? The best part is these are all going to be blind, right? So we don't know any proof. We don't know any age or any of those details, nor the actual mash bills that we're going to be going through in terms of the samples and how they're labeled. And Blake, I know you're a huge fan of blind tasting. You just want to fill people in on why you usually are such a big proponent of that?
Yeah, because everybody thinks they're smart until they taste blind. And it is it's pretty true. You know, you go and you taste these things, or you just have this idea of what you like and don't like, and then when you strip away the bottle, strip away how much you paid for it, strip away, you know, what all the internet bloggers and people on Instagram are saying about it, typically you have a very different reaction. And you know, I'll be the first one to admit that I look really dumb when I'm doing blind tastings, because you know, we had one a few weeks ago and I said, oh yeah, this got to be a weeder, this from Buffalo Trace, like I know this. It was Rhetoric 23 year. Never in 1,000 years would I thought it was. I thought it was like something in the 12-year range. Nope, turns out it's double that. And so I think it's just a fun experience, and I think it's the only way to get a true understanding of what you're tasting and what you really think is to taste blind.
I have to tell you, it was fun picking the barrels and to try to kind of not screw you up a little, but to give you a little bit of a challenge to see what you come up with.
You know, and like you said, you know, it's 3 different mash bills we're working with. And in my head, it's like, all right, I'm going to be able to tell the difference between 99% corn and a 45% wheat. And then you start tasting and you're like, oh, definitely the wheat. Then you get to the next one, you're like, well, this is the wheat too. The third one, like, is this wheat too? Hold on. So no, it'll be fun to go through these, and I can't wait to get the feedback and see how much I missed. So
awesome. All right, so why don't we start pouring the samples? Why don't we do, and you know, Danny and Mike remind us, you sent us 6 samples. They're labeled 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, right? So we're looking to choose one of the 1s, one of the 2s, one of the 3s, right?
That's correct. Each number
maybe do
is
like
different
all
mash.
the A's together. Is that the?
I think we're doing the
Just one-
ones,
yeah, why don't we
for
start with
example,
ones
and then we're going to
together?
choose
Okay.
between. So we got to choose
A
an
or
A
B.
or a B
Gotcha.
of each one.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then, so these 3 mash bills, these are the standard 3 mash bills for the Penelope Bourbon blend, but you guys have your own percentages. And so basically we're going to be first picking the exact barrel with the flavor profile, and then in round 2 doing our own percentages and kind of like a variation of what would be the Penelope 4-grain bourbon, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the one difference that we're doing here is so the traditional Penelope, we're using 2 and 3 year old bourbon for our kind of core products. These are 4 and 3 year old. So, you know, basically, so just a year kind of difference in age, just to give it some sort of nuance and some differentiation there as well. So, but yeah, it's going to be the same mashes that we use for ours. Exactly.
And I think we introduced this in a little bit in the beginning, but I think what's really cool about this project is we're not only getting the barrels that we like. In the next round of selection, we'll be getting the percentages that we like. So we may say, hey, we want, you know, 30% of barrel 1 and 50% of barrel 2, and then you know, 20% of barrel 3, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And I think for us too, I mean, when we started this, we've never really deviated from our blend since we started. So for us too, it's, I don't know, you know, it's kind of different. It's exciting, you know, and I know there's just the blending itself there's a lot of subtleties to it. So some variations in either direction on either mash, you know, plays a big difference. Certainly.
That's the interesting part. So typically speaking, what's the breakdown between the 99% corn, the wheat, and the high rye?
Dan, you want to go?
Yeah, so our general baseline blend is about, you know, 33%, a third, and then it varies per batch, plus or minus maybe 10%, depending on the barrels that, you know, we've chosen or we've blended for that dump.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. We lose Blake all the time. That's okay.
Yeah.
Florida doesn't
He'll
have
be
good
on and off.
Yep.
Just watch
Blake's
for him.
internet
in
issue.
So Nick, as you're tasting these, did you start cracking into sample 1 or sample 1B, 1A, 1B?
Yeah, and I've tried them a couple times now, and I kind of wanted to piggyback on that blending talk. So as we're looking, you know, this 2-part, or really in 3-part in a way, because we're really going to do 3 like a typical standard barrel pick right now 3
Yep.
times. And then we're going to do the blending. But I know we were talking about this ahead of time about this idea with blending is you run into an issue is one, we don't know right now, we don't know the yield of any of these barrels because it's all we pulled from all these.
Exactly.
For all we know, we could have a low fill barrel in there. And so if we say, oh, we like this one, we want this one to be 60% of the blend, and it turns out that's a low fill barrel, that really pretty much limits everything. And we might be only using fractional parts of those other 2 barrels. At the end of maybe the 2 we want less of, we got high fill barrels, for example.
Mhm.
So I know
Yeah.
that's something you guys were talking about in the economics of it and kind of just what you deal with and what you have to deal with from buying these without necessarily knowing, fully what you're going to get. So talk a little, I thought that was interesting. If you could explain that a little bit more.
So unfortunately, yeah, sometimes your perfect blend isn't the most economical blend, and we have leftover juice from a barrel dump. So, whatever your lowest yield is of whatever the mash is of your lowest yield kind of drives your total yield, right? Because you can't use, it limits what you can use from the other mashes. So yeah, sometimes when those numbers work out and the lowest yield is your highest percentage of that batch, you're left with some leftover juice, and we put it to use, some personal use or
Yeah, that's just it. I think because we still are young and we don't have just like excess juice just lying around from prior batches, and we can get creative. And I think that's kind of part of what I think is really fun about this exercise is that it's really confined to 3 barrels that we don't really know anything about. And I think it's kind of taking folks on that journey of not just picking them, but seeing both the going deep on the flavor profile side, but also towards the tail end of it, thinking about the economics of it and more of like that business aspect about case yield and really how case yield could impact, like a price point as a good example. So there's just a lot of good fun things to take it through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, well, we keep talking about these. Nick, you went through these a few times. What are you seeing between 1A and 1B?
So I'm looking at my notes from the other day too, as I'm tasting these and trying to draw the similarities and the correlations. With A, I'm getting a bigger pop of spice. With this one, I'm getting a licorice note, a little bit on the sweeter side, but that sweet, spicy mix on it. I think it's got a little bit of a brighter nose than B does. On B, I'm getting a little bit more unique flavor profile. For some reason, I wrote down that it seems like it would go good with a cigar for whatever reason. But I'm getting like a good amount of flavor, but I'm really not getting as much spice. It's like it's flattening out a little bit, kind of mid-palate for me. With B, not to say that's a bad thing, but just by comparison, it's that kind of spicy pop versus that, flatter kind of, flat but still somewhat bold flavor.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel the same way where I'm assuming these are they're the same mash bill, but very similar age range. But A definitely had that spice and what I think of more of like that witch's hat. It kind of comes in, spikes up with the spice and the heat, comes back down and finishes off. Where B actually was a little more buttery, softer. It's one of those things, and this is the interesting thing because if we're just picking a barrel, I'd say, oh, I like B just because it's it's good, it's easy. But then we're thinking, all right, we're taking this another step and we're going to blend it. So how do we want to see this affect a blend at the end of the day? So I don't know, like personally, I like B, but then I think A has more qualities. And would hold stronger in a batch too. So,
yeah, this is definitely different than a normal single barrel pick that we normally do, right? Just for all those reasons we talked about, because it's not just, I think all of us, right, and many viewers at home, when you do get a chance to do a single barrel pick, it's often, well, let me see if I can get something a little off profile, a little funky versus what I'm used to drinking. And in this case, that might not necessarily be the best thing. And I'm definitely agreeing with you know, with the differences and nuances that you guys pointed out between the two, because B is definitely more unique, but I don't know if I necessarily want to blend that into a blend either, because some of that uniqueness might not be a good thing either.
Yep.
Yeah, I almost feel like it's like we got to go through, talk about A and B of each one, and then kind of come back and say, you know, what's the combination of, you know, from the three that we want to kind of move forward with? Where do we want to pull the spicy notes from? Where do we want to pull the sweeter notes from? Where do we want to pull some of the more maybe unique? Maybe there's a unique flavor in one of them that we say, oh, if we can get that one to carry forward potentially into the blend, that could be pretty cool. So I almost feel like that added dimension, and this is really the first time for me, at least. I've done a lot of barrel picks. I've done my own home blending just for fun, but frankly, for me, this is the first time I've done this level of blending. So that's what's really fun about it, because I do have a lot of respect for this people that do this kind of blending, because certainly from my own home blending, what I've realized is it's really hard to take two and somehow make it better than, say you have like a good one and a not so good one. It's hard to take those two or even three or whatever and make a final product that's better than, say, your best one. So that's the goal, is to somehow elevate everything with this. And that's what's going to be kind of the challenge here. So I'm interested to hear, Eric, I didn't hear your thoughts yet on this.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts so far?
So I agreed a lot with Blake. I do think 1A is the better one, or potentially has a little more interesting to use in a blend. I think B would be, it's got, I think, a little more oak. It's a little more caramel notes, and that would be good on its own. To me, it reminds me more of traditional bourbon almost, even though it's got some weirdness to it, but it's still kind of in that same wheelhouse. But one is just, see, I get some more floral notes on the nose and a little more fruit on the palate. So, and on the finish, a little more grain, and all of that combined, I think it's going to do some interesting things in a blend.
Yeah, definitely. And so why don't we leave ones aside? Why don't we move on to twos? And why we do that, right? Why we start doing 2A and 2B, you know, Danny, you do a lot of the blending and I know like you do too, but you guys do a lot of the blending, really, right? So when you're sitting in your kitchen or in a warehouse or anywhere that you typically blend, do you feel that, you know, do you tackle it more as an art or as a science, right? Is there a method that you consistently go after, or what do you think about when you're putting together that blend, and when do you know it's done in your mind?
Yeah, Danny's Danny, I'll let you take that one for sure.
Yeah, so, you know, it's game time when those barrels are dumped. And, you know, a lot of people say, you know, why don't you sample every barrel and, you know, from your batch and then do the blend beforehand. But we actually really like to do it on the fly. It's more scalable, I think. You know, it's more of like an experience and kind of growing that art, as you said before, when you're dumping the barrels and you're blending it not on the, you know, that same day. So you're getting those nuances in those combined barrels, and then figuring out, okay, what am I going to do here? And it really starts with like doing it on a small scale like this. You know, we'll be in like the lab or the side area of the warehouse, and we'll take it at this scale, right? 2 glasses, a scale, some beakers, and start doing that. Okay, this tastes good. Oh, that doesn't taste good. You know, what I always do is I always walk away for like 20 minutes and come back to it, you know, after I did the first, and then taste it again. If it's like 2 times in a row, then I know it's good, right? Then we go up to a bigger scale. Now I get like the 750 or the 100 liter, you know, beakers, and mixing it at a little bigger of a scale, so I can just figure out what those nuances are in the scalability of the blend, right? Get something there. So now I know that it happened twice, right? Came up with something, the same taste twice. So now it's a little bit proven, right? Now I'll go to the big tanks, right? You know, move 1,000 gallons of this over. Now start mixing everything else in the right weights and tasting it along the way, always leaving a little extra of each mash on the side so that you can then start tweaking it minutely. It's pretty interesting. It's crazy. It's stressful because you can't go back. Once you pump 1,000 gallons of something into a couple other 1,000 gallons, it's like, it's done. You can't separate the liquid at that point.
Danny, I don't want to put too much more added pressure. Danny's done amazing with this, considering he's never, he's an engineer by trade, which I think plays a big part in his attention to detail in this area. But I'll be honest, when you're if we're working with, if we're at Castle and Key or we're working with Strong Spirits, we're flying in, we're doing it. Not to add more added pressure for Danny, because we have a bottle, we're doing a big run in June. But, as a small company, this is a lot of inventory and a lot of cash flow tied into this run. So it's like we kind of go into it being like, dude, we can't screw this up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No pressure, but we can't screw this up.
Yeah. When you get it, you get it, and you just know. Like, I can remember each batch just hitting that point and being like, just feeling this like weight lifting off of your shoulders and being like, this is it,
And when did you guys do your first batch? How long ago was that?
Week of December 15th, 2018.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So we only did 6 barrels on that first one, and I'll never forget it. We were both so new to this industry. I would just walk in there and they look at us and they're like, all right, what's your process? And I go, I don't know, you tell me. What do you mean? Process? I'm like, no, and so right from there, we kind of knew we had to roll up our sleeves, come up with like a really strong method of operation. We've had a lot of issues, through the time doing it. Now with our 80 proof, I think there's a little bit more margin for consistency because of the proofing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
However, cast strength, this is our 4th batch we just did in February. And we generally try to do beta runs. So cast strength, we did a very small beta run. We kind of knew that blending a cast strength was going to be a little bit more, have some nuances. Even when we're dumping these barrels, there's just a lot that we didn't account for. And so the process is continually refining based on, key learnings and things that we think are extracting the best flavor profile from the batch.
Yep.
Yeah.
And speaking of batches, Eric, what do you think about these samples? What do you get when you start tasting 2A and 2B?
Let's see, 2A. Well, on the nose, I had a little more classic rye kind of grain scent from it. Where on 2B, I felt was a little fruitier and stronger. I don't even want to go right into the palate. I think on 2A, it was kind of sweet, oaky, a little cherry, baking spice, some heat on that finish. 2B was I had chewy oak, caramel, and a little bit of pine. It wasn't like a strong pine, but it was it's hard to describe. I don't know. You go ahead and do your notes, and then I'll tell you which one I like the best.
Yeah. Well, we're still sipping on these. We got a question from Greg. So Danny and Mike, what's the proof on your cast strength?
So our last batch was 116.6, and
Awesome.
it's usually they've all been 116s or 117s.
What batch number is that for you guys?
What's that?
Is that batch 5 for you guys?
Batch 4.
Batch 4?
It's batch 4 at barrel strength, yeah.
It's funny because batch 3 and batch 4 both literally came in at 116.6. If we get it 3 times in a row, I'm going to go to Dan. I'm going to try to have these labels printed.
Yeah. Or just go play those numbers in the lottery.
Yeah.
No.
I think the highest proof we got was in batch 2, which was 117.8, which I think is pretty consistent for MGP cast strength, like somewhere in that just south of 120 ballpark.
Where are they going in the barrel at? Do you know?
120.
They are going in at 120.
Yeah.
Interesting. So they're dropping a little bit.
They've all dropped. All the matches they drop. Sorry.
And Nick, when you're tasting these, what are you getting when you do 2A and 2B?
I was going to ask if anybody was picking up any like mint at all in 2A. Kind of a little bit
Can't say
I'm
I
getting a
do.
little bit
I
on the
don't know.
nose.
I feel like I'm searching for rye spice, and I'm not getting it as much on this.
Get a little more oak in both of them. A little more
Yeah.
new oak.
I'm getting B is a little more classic to me, whereas I'm finding A to be the more dynamic of the two, a little more unique flavor profile.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I get a little bit of like the baking spice, a little more fruitiness on 2B.
And Danny, when
Yeah,
you and Mike
pretty
too, when you
classic.
guys are going to pick barrels, right? Are you looking for a consistent profile between batches? Do you want each batch to be slightly unique from the other one? What's your methodology there? Like, what's your mindset?
It's really we're literally talking through a lot of this now. We're so young. I mean, we're still trying to figure out our identity from a brand perspective. I think we really, for our 80 proof, we have a very clear strategy with what we're trying to do with that product. We're trying to create a very consistent product. Now with cast strength, this is an evolving. We just the other day we were talking about how we want to kind of really get a better cadence around when we're releasing it. Do we name it, and do we actually try to have a little bit of fun with it, in the sense of maybe we tweak the blend, or maybe we change the age statement, or we can do a little bit with it to kind of give its own kind of personality year over year.
Yep.
Which is, I think, for cast strength, I think that's something I think we're probably going to end up doing.
Yeah, that's definitely. Go ahead.
I think you find a baseline when we dump the barrels. We can find a baseline of like, okay, we get it to a point where it's like, okay, this is Penelope. Okay, this is similar to the last batch, and then it's like, well, wait a second, the rye barrels in this dump were exceptionally great. So like maybe we want to like bring them forward a little more to make it a little better. Like, so it's always going to be the Penelope blend, but if there's an opportunity to kind of bring out something that's exceptional, I think we're going to take that step. And we have in the last couple of batches. I think that's why there's been subtle, I don't know if it's improvements or differences. I think to each their own. So maybe some people think there are improvements and maybe some don't, but it's whatever we're feeling that day. I think it's definitely still in the Penelope realm, but there's definitely nuances between each batch. When you're blending at barrel strength, it's like near impossible to get it like, the same identical.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the fun part with it anyways is, if you want something that's mass produced, just go to one of the big brands who's dumping 1,000 barrels at a time, and that makes it pretty easy. So, I think the nuances between each batch is what makes it interesting.
Yep.
I think it just was hard for us to wrap our head around that, not coming from this industry. You think about it, like, just consumer products in general. It could be, CPG, food and beverage. Generally, you make a product and you want to just keep making it and making it and making it and building a brand. And it's just, and I see obviously a lot of similarities with wine and things like that. But it's just interesting that you make it and then it's gone, and then you kind of just almost start from scratch a little bit. It's like there's really nothing else like it, which is what kind of draws us to it, which is what's exciting about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we? So with the thought of we're still thinking those over and thinking what works best in a blend potentially. Why don't we move on to 3, right? 3A, 3B, and we'll sample these and talk about them a little bit. And I have a question for both of you, but really I guess Danny, since I know you do a lot of the blending. So before Penelope started, right, when you were just drinking at home, did you ever just try blending other bourbons or ryes together just to see what they would taste like, right? Any off-the-shelf bottle, like I wonder what this would taste like if I blend this with this.
The only blending that I did beforehand was probably like reusing the same glass for the bottle. Unfortunately, I wish I did.
There's a little bit left in this, and
yeah, just I wish I did, but it's been interesting, definitely.
Now your kitchen looks like it's in Breaking Bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely true. My wife just wants her kitchen back. It's like scales and beakers and all different test like little stands and.
I guess people talk about the infinity, like what, like an infinity bottle.
Yep.
That's maybe that's like the original, the OG blend could be something like one of those.
There you go. Did you guys ever think about doing a Penelope Infinity bottle?
Yeah, I actually have, and I thought about doing it with other, partnering with other brands. I thought a lot about that actually a lot recently, but that's more kind of up in the head, and it's like something that, because as we were gearing up to do this, I was thinking a lot about that because. We have a unique flavor profile, but then just combining it with other ones, it could be a great thing that maybe you do for charity or, something like that. It could be a great idea. Mm-hmm.
So threes, as I'm nosing these and drinking these are good. I really like the nose on 3B here. Just classic, just not too in your face, not too off profile. It's nice.
I thought these two barrels had the biggest, difference in profiles. I don't know if you feel that.
I don't know if it's just my lighting either, but 3A to me is noticeably darker than B here. And I'm definitely getting like a robust, it's got a real robust flavor profile to it.
3A.
A does for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
3A is really nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Danny, it's interesting just tasting even a year difference from what we're normally doing.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's to me, it's a little more similar with the ones where A has a little more kind of just punch to it, a little more flavor.
Mm-hmm.
B is a little more rounded, whereas on the ones, I enjoyed the softness of B, but on this, I kind of like where A is.
Yeah, it's punching.
Just a lot of different things going on.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there, Blake. I'm almost like, as I'm thinking now through this thing and that, I'm almost like I would settle. I had starred this one myself too. Is almost like the backbone of the start of the discussion to kind of like work the way back through. Because you do get that. The more rounded one, and I got it with B as well, 1B as well, and I got it with 3B. But then you say, well, okay, which one of those is maybe now you're going to compare those, for example. And so I'm starting to think of the structure of this thing, and I feel like the structure of it, I feel like this 3A is a good one to kind of pull the structure from as to, okay, what do we feel like we want to blend with this one as a starting point as I was tasting through these, because it's got that kind of robust flavor. It's got some great color to it, but at the same time, it's not, I don't feel like it's overpowering or dominating in any way where you could blend stuff into it and kind of like move that needle around a little bit for where you end up in the end.
I don't know if I could give any input, but
No,
I probably shouldn't. But these two are these two are blend game changers.
Yeah, I can definitely see
You
this.
say that.
So here's what we do. We pick both of them and just kidding.
Yeah, the differences between these two are definitely changers.
What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I think the finish on 3A is really going to, potentially, and we don't know for sure, but I think that finish is going to really add an element to the blend. Where the other ones we just tasted didn't quite have that, where that maybe that'll stand out and be part of the blend.
Yep. So, all right, this is really interesting.
What are your backgrounds like? What your preferences on bourbons? Like weeded, rye? Are you all over the place?
I like bourbon typically in a glass, and I'm good. I've got this. Thumbs up for me.
I think, I think Nick says that jokingly, but I think we all have our preferences, but we also all have to be in the certain mood we're in too, right? So day-to-day drinking, like just a day drinking light bourbon, I'm going to go for something wheated. If it's going to be night and if I'm in the mood, I'm going to go for something maybe rye, a little bit aged older, maybe barrel proof. I think whiskey is one of those things where we all have multiple loves, right? And it just depends on the type of mood we're in, at least personally, to pull those out.
Now, do you have hopes of making this blend towards a mood, or kind of working backwards from what you can do and then picking the mood based on what you make?
That's a good question. I mean, personally, I think we're just looking to make the best blend at the moment, right? I think this will be just such a unique, and for those just tuning in, this is going to be the first Penelope Bourbon blended bourbon that they're doing with other individuals. So, Blake from Seelbach and us from Breaking Bourbon, and we're just super excited to do that. So I think no matter how we do it, we're just looking to make the best blend for those folks out there.
Mhm.
What about you, Blake? You have like a favorite per se?
No, I mean, it's kind of the same. I have my favorites in categories. Typically, if the question of you got one bourbon to choose, I'm grabbing a Stag, which is technically low rye, but barrel proof. So no, I mean, it's all over the place. But with this, I think it's fun to see what's the best thing we can possibly make. And those number 3 samples were, shoot, I'd put those 2 in a glass and just call it a day on my sample kit.
There's been many times that's happened. Where I said,
it does say 4 grain on the label, so we'll throw on top of that.
That's happened a lot. I've been like, I'm good. But it's part of the fun, and that's part, it's part of it. But that's happened many times for sure.
So as we go in and start debating what the 3 combinations should be, one more question before you do that. Have you guys ever gone out to pick your barrels for the Penelope blend and just found one barrel that stood out so much that you're like, I love to put this in a bottle, but I'm just going to make this a private barrel, and it's going to be a private Penelope barreling just for us and our friends?
We do. We have our own inventory.
Okay.
For sure, yeah. I don't know if it's for us and our friends, but I know like when Danny's son Cooper was born, Danny's got some of his preferences, and MGP's been good to us, and they kind of even took care of us a little bit on some of them there, and yeah, we have a few, but I don't know if it's necessarily for us and our friends. It's I think we're this is something we it'd be a limited just obviously a very small amount of it, but actually it probably would just be for us, Danny.
No, yeah, I thought about that a lot. Like,
yeah,
I'm gonna do the whole barrel of bourbon.
And as we go into it, Kendrick has a really good question, right? So how would you recommend a blend, and how many different proofs would you normally recommend that go into your blend, right? So if you're at home, if you're just blending with your bourbon when you're in the warehouse picking barrels, or if you just want to have fun at home, right? What would you recommend to those watching?
Danny, I'll start off, and then I'm going to turn it over to you because you can provide really specific details. But the one thing from just a consumer taste profile perspective, I mean, the difference is, I mean, you can really see, you could see what a proofing exercise looks like by trying cast strength, Penelope, and then trying the 80 proof. Now, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just, I mean, the range is significant in terms of what a proofing, what proofing does. I mean, then you want to get into some of the details about how many.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is going to answer the question, but I try not to get married to a barrel per se in a blend, right? Because we're taking each mash bill, then we're blending a bunch of those barrels together, and then taking those blends and then blending again, right? So try not to get too married to a barrel at that first blend level, because I think you need to like let that blend happen and see what you get, and then make magic happen out of that. And that's why one of the reasons why we do that blending on the fly is like you'd be surprised. Like you guys just I thought it was interesting how you said you love this barrel, but you would think of the other barrel for a blend, mm-hmm. right? So like just because we love a barrel by itself doesn't mean it necessarily is good for the overall blend of Penelope.
Yep.
So we try not to like get too sidetracked by that specific barrel. Just let the blend happen. You know, if you're dumping 30 barrels of one mash, you know, magic is going to happen, and that's going to be something spectacular. And, you know, if it's not as good as the last batch, like, you have to make it work. And you do that by adding in the other two mashes in varying, you know, amounts to make something great.
Yeah. And you know what, I'll piggyback on that too. Cause I had dropped a note for folks to try, you know, if you bottle your bottles at home, give it a try with blending. You know, and how I do that, I've done a couple different ways. I've, you know, kind of done like a 2-3 blend and just let it sit in a, you know, in like a smaller sample bottle. But then the infinity blend too, where basically you just keep adding more, you know, to it. And I like the infinity, and I've lost complete track of what's in mine from over the years. But you know, I kind of like just moving the needle from where it is, where however it tastes. If I'm like, oh, I think this might taste better with a little more chocolate note, you know, I'll add like a little bit of malt to it, or with a spicy note, or with a higher proof or whatever. And I'll just keep kind of adding to it at home. And it's funny how sometimes I hit it right. And over the years, I hit it right like twice. And when I did that, I kind of ended up not adding stuff to it and drinking it down quite a bit. And then you kind of restart that. And it's amazing how difficult it is to get back to, you know, something you like. So that as an iterative process, it's fun to do at home because you see how difficult it really is to do. And I can't even imagine trying to do it on that large scale where you have that, like these Penelope guys were talking about, where you have that deviation from kind of the sample size to then, you know, as you scale this up, you know, you have to be careful as you scale it up because you do get somewhat of a deviation on that, which would certainly be very daunting with so many dollars on the table for how that end product ends up coming out.
Yeah, I remember one of our first dumps, the scale that they were weighing the liquid on, it went in like 20, 25 pound increments. And I was like, wait, what's going on? Where'd that 25 pounds go? You know, it was like, oh God. And I'm like trying to figure out like how fast this pump is pumping. Like, and like, all right, put it on for like 2.3 seconds. You know, and I'm like, that should be about 10 gallons there, or 10 pounds. So,
Oh man.
Yeah, so sometimes you get caught up in like some of the nuance, like the details.
I'm thinking about approaching this too, and you know, I'm like almost this top down. Like, do we want to almost define what we're going for? Are we going for like a sweeter, easy drinking, like crowd pleaser? Are we going for like a big pop of flavor? You know, are we going for just let's get the most variation we can among them and then see what happens? You know, did you guys think about that at all ahead of this?
Well, I think, you know, what I'd love to do is really let's see kind of where we're at aligned and see if any barrels are unanimous, and then see if we need to tweak it, fine tune from there. Because I think that might go a little bit quicker because we're each probably approaching it slightly different.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I'm not unanimous because I'm like, well, if we want this, I'd go this way. If we want that, I'd go that way. So that's what's your
personal favorite profile? What's your three? If you were to pick three of those right now, one from each category, what would you pick? Just for the love of what you tasted.
I have a couple where I'm tied and I'm more on which direction we want to go. That's why why I introduced what I just said.
So if I was going through, if I was going through these three, right, I would probably choose a 1A, a 2B, and a 3A, right? I think 1A was that more traditional flavor profile for me. 2A and 2B were both good. 2B was just slightly, the oak didn't interfere as much, I thought, in the flavor profile. And then 3A and 3B were both great, but, you know, 3A had a really punchy flavor profile, which I think would really add a nice combination between the two and really kick it up to just a weird, fun flavor profile. Tasty too.
I actually went very similar, but I went ABA. Or no, I went BBA.
Okay, BBA.
Sorry, hold on. Well, hold on, let me look at my spreadsheet. I went BBA. Okay.
BBA.
This is why I write things down. You know, you start drinking and all of a sudden.
The Star Wars character, isn't it? BBA?
Yeah. So I went BBA and, you know, I felt like I get where you're going on A on number one. But I liked B so much. I felt like it was just round, and it's kind of that thing. Like, is it better in a blend? Does it bring more flavor to a blend, or does it bring some nice balance, some nice roundness? Kind of fills it up with some of those notes that I didn't get in the other samples.
Yep.
So that was my logic there.
What about you? What about you, Eric? What were, if you're picking 3, what are you going with?
So at first I was going for A. Yeah. A.
Triple A. I mean, that makes it.
But to Blake's point, and after we tasted 3A and 3B, I kind of retasted 2A and 2B just now. And I'm wondering if BBA kind of aligns a little bit better, and maybe some magic would happen just with similar.
Like where your head's at, Eric. You're going to a good spot. Keep it.
And then there's, all right, do we do a little weirdness with the A, 1A with the 2A? That's a little weird too. And then with the 3A, that's going to ground it a little bit. And this is where maybe Danny and Mike are like Tim Gunn guys helping us here.
Yeah.
They give us some advice.
Designers, are you ready?
Designers, are you ready?
Andre.
Nick, I want to hear your combination, but before we do, real quick, we had 2 questions for Danny and Mike, right? Can people in Ohio or Texas get Penelope? Are you guys available in those states yet?
Well, I think, Blake, do you guys ship to Texas or Ohio?
Definitely not Texas. I know that's for sure. I'd have to check on Ohio. I think they may be okay. I'd have to double check that one though.
Okay. Yeah, we're working on distribution. I mean, for us, it's a work in progress. But I do know Texas and Ohio are very, very high on our priority list. Just given the market, so it's something we're working on for sure.
Great. And then Nick, your 3. You got to name just one of each. What are you going with?
Or you could be two.
What's that?
Or you could be me and name 2 completely different blends.
I
either want all A or all B. I don't know.
I actually have 3.
I'll just give us one.
So, well, it's not my approach. I mean, do it how you want. That's how I'm going to do it. So I'm looking at this. So I'm looking at this and saying, okay, if what we're going for is more of that like sweeter, more classic profile, then I'm going to go B all the way down, because I was finding that more so with the Bs really kind of across the board. Yep. If we're going to go bold with like a mix of, it's not a mix, but like more of this boldness and some more unusual flavor profiles in there, I'm going to go A across the board. If we want to take a mix of these and kind of play with some of that, then I'm on the BBA for that. So definitely BB. And I feel like A in the third one was when we're talking about that spicy boldness, that was the one to bring into it. So that's where I was getting to, like, what do we want out of this thing? What do we want to start with from that starting point? Because my picks change based on that, because they're different bourbons. And honestly, surprisingly, I mean, I've had a lot of younger MGP stuff, especially lately. And this is actually a little older than some of that stuff, but these are, I actually think we got lucky in that we got a lot of pretty good barrels, because I've definitely had some older, even like 5-year MGP stuff that I've tasted. I said, this isn't ready. I'm surprised they're even putting this out as a barrel to pick a single barrel from, so I definitely feel like we got lucky in that sense that we got a lot of good ones to choose from, and each one kind of we're looking at has qualities that you could say, yeah, I like what this one's bringing to the table. It's just like, what do I want that end product to look like? What's our goal for this end product? So that's where I'm at with it. Even with Nick's 3 votes, which is okay. Here's what came up most often. So out of the samples, 1A or 1B, 1B came up more often. That got the most votes. Out of the samples, 2A or 2B, 2B came up more. 2B came up most often too. So 1B, 2B, right? And for the third barrel, A came up most often.
Third barrel was our only unanimous barrel, wasn't it?
That was taking away Nick's,
or considering Nick's.
Yes, yes, it was, right?
So what were your 3 again?
It was ABA. So that if we
Just
go
like
that one, and
basketball
I'm
league.
not really opposed personally too, because I can easily swing my vote and make this really easy. I'm not really opposed to 1B. I think it'll make it for a different blend, but not a bad blend, right? I think no matter what we choose, I truly feel 3A is going to pop out of all those other ones, right? And that might be one that we lean more towards anyways in the mix. And the base I really feel is going to be that, sample 1, sample 2, and then 3 is going to be the game changer, like we had talked about at the beginning. And now after going through these a few times, I understand that. But, if we want BBA, I am completely okay with that too, because I think it's really that third barrel that makes the selection very unique, very special, and going to make a really great blend.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, it's kind of like it's that pyramid. We're building the base, and we got a lot of good flavor coming in that base, and then if you throw in that 3A that just has all interesting flavors and spices and everything else, that's going to be kind of the top of it, where it just really ties it all together. So I think that. While BBA was how I voted, I think that could potentially give us a lot of interesting blends to work with. So
it's almost like the Four Roses, like add that 4% of that other recipe, just as the flavor kicker. Thinking about like the 3A, for example, and you could go either way. You could say, all right, let's start with 3A as the base and pull it down a little bit and see what happens. Or let's start with the other ones as a base and then add 3A a little bit to kind of see how you work off of that classic flavor profile and kind of deviate from there.
That's next video talk. Don't be trying to throw out teasers like that.
Calm it down.
That'll be the teaser. But I think, unless anybody has a real strong preference to go a different way, I think BBA is going to be the selection. So 1B, 2B, 3A. That's looking like that's going to be our combination. And then what we're going to do for those still watching. So there's going to be a part 2. It's going to be next week. All of us are going to get together, and in real time, right, we're going to be doing these blends. So all of us, we're going to go offline. We're going to do our blends separately, the 4 of us. The 5 of us, 4 of us, and then we'll come back, and we're gonna come with our best blends. So we're each gonna be master blenders at home for a little bit. Then we're gonna come back and we're gonna have everyone try and blend their own, try and sway them towards our blend and see what we come up with. And that's gonna be really fun because not a lot of barrel picks, if any at all, are done this way. This is super unique, right? And this is a big step out that Penelope's doing with us, and we're thrilled to be doing it with them too. And then to have the opportunity for those at home to actually try this blend that we're coming up with is awesome, right? This is going to be really, really fun. And I'm looking forward to it.
Are we going to reveal? I can't.
Now the time.
I can't. I'm like the kid. I want to know exactly what I'm getting for Christmas.
You want another 3 barrels
early. So,
wait. Before we
guess?
do that, though,
can we
before
guess?
we do that, yeah. I mean, I gotta say, I went through the same thing, Blake, where I was like tasting through. I'm like, oh, this is definitely, this is definitely wheat. Then no. It's the next one, and I was thrown by them. I mean, so I was all over the place and trying to guess what was what. And then the variation from A to B threw me off even more.
I think 2 has to be the rye. And then I almost lean a little more towards 3 being the wheat. Just because the softness on 1, it's, you think about the more sugar content you're getting from the corn, and I get some of that butteriness, and I don't know if I'm just relating it more to the like corn on the cob, but on 3 you get some of the sweetness, but it's not quite that very when you think of like mellow corn or corn whiskey, it's very mellow and subdued and kind of rounded notes, and that's kind of what I get off of 1B. But I don't know, and I'm trying to talk as long as I can and read Danny's facial expressions. And he is a heck of a poker player.
He's got his hand up.
Man, I just keep going, and I'm like, he's going to eventually tip me off here, and he's not at all.
What I think is really interesting too, just like kind of going through this and watching you all go through it. I mean, it's amazing because these are between A and B across all 3 of them, they're all the same mash bill. And so it just kind of highlights the nuances that can happen based on the cooperage, based on when the batch was run, based on the seasonality. So, I mean, because there's some clear differences amongst A and B.
Oh yeah. Well, I think you could have switched up a 1A and a 2A, and we probably wouldn't have been able to tell if we're being honest about it, you know, because the difference between A and B are pretty significant. So that's always the fun part to see, you know. People just think, oh, well, all bourbon's the same. Well, no, let it hit that wood for a few years and see what happens.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's quite the quote.
Yeah, it was interesting to see what you picked, and you know, you got to think about the overall balance of how these are going to meld together, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely agree. 3A, like I think someone said it. 3A, you could put in a bottle and
Still,
it was definitely my favorite pick.
Was that the one you were holding up the bottle of yesterday?
Yeah, that's the one I was drinking yesterday.
That was
I don't know. I really like it.
It's good. I mean, do we want to keep it out of the blend and call it a private barrel? Is that what you're saying?
I want to.
yeah.
You know what? If we only use a little of it, Blake, there's going to be a bunch left over.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what I was saying.
That
Like
private selection.
3A, 3B, they're blend changers. Like 3A is out there, you know, so that's going to start dominating. I don't want to get into the blend or give you guys any, you know, of my thoughts, but you know, the threes are blend changers. So you got to be careful.
I think we're probably all going to see that as we take this away and do some blending ourselves at home. It's definitely going to be, that'll be a fun experience for us. So do we want, before we wrap this up for tonight, do we want to reveal what each one is, the mash bill, or do you want to reveal that?
I think so.
All right, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely.
Danny, why don't you give us the honors of telling us what we're choosing here? So samples, you know, 1A, what are we, or 1B, I mean, I'm sorry, what are we selecting with 1B?
Sure. So what the ones were wheat mash bills, 45% wheat mash bills.
Mm-hmm.
I got it backwards, I think.
What about the B's, or 2B? I'm sorry, so 2B.
Twos. What were the twos?
The twos were the 99% corn barrel.
Oh my word! I went 0 for 3. Wow.
And so we have rye for 3 then.
I love this. I wish we could do this every single time we dump barrels.
Blake, we got a great website we'll send you to. You can learn all about bourbon. It'll
yeah. If you want to learn from a pro, go to bourbonr.com. All right, I got to go back and try. No, 2B. Hold on, because so that's all just the oak. That's what's really interesting. That's because there's spice there. There's there's all kinds of
that. And Mike knows this, that 99% corn is like one of my favorites aged. I mean, it's like, I can drink that all day long.
Yep. I think it's
because you're right. There's a lot of that oak that comes out in it.
Yeah. I'm going to make everybody I know try this and tell me, what do you think this is? Oh, this has got to be a high rye bourbon, right?
Fucking insane.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, you know what, Blake? I had corn.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I went 0 for 3 too. I didn't agree with you, but I had corn rye.
I was wrong, just in a different way.
I did agree with you on the wheat, but I flopped corn and rye. And again, I went through that same thing because you're picking up these notes that are so similar. In fact, I found that in some cases, like 1B was more similar to 3B than it was to 1A, for example. So that's what made it really tricky, because you've got across these different mash bills similarities where, because there's so much variation from barrel to barrel, I'm getting more similarities, from these different barrels than I am from the same mash bills, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, which, I think that's a testament to kind of, what comes off of the distillation process, and then how much more the barrel affects it, where it's aging in the warehouse, what kind of cooperage they're using, and all of those things. It does play a huge role. There's no doubt about that.
I was going to ask Danny, do you have the information in front of you? Any other specifics, like especially about the sample 3A, kind of any details that you can share that you got in front of you? What kind of barrels are they? Are they Speyside, Kelvin?
They're all Speyside except for one barrel is a Kelvin.
Interesting.
The 3B is a Kelvin.
Got it.
3B was a Kelvin. Huh.
Yeah.
But
And something
where was it? Maybe like I don't know if we have the specific details on the location of the barrel.
Yeah, so that's like 3A, 3B is interesting because as you know, like 3B was one of your favorites, one of my favorites. That was on a low floor in a warehouse compared to like 3B, which was on a high floor, and 3B was 112 proof. Meanwhile, 3A was 116.6.
All right.
That's the match.
So 3B was 3B was the lowest proof of all 6 of those barrels at 112.
And what else do we got for proofs, Danny?
So like, for instance, the wheats, the 1A, 1B, they were pretty similar, 116, 117.
Okay.
And they were both in the same warehouse and close floors, like 5th floor, 3rd floor. And these were actually from one of MGP's favorite warehouses, Warehouse G. And then 2A, 2B, again, we have a little discrepancy with the proof. 3A was 118, and then 3B was 113.8. So
that's a pretty big difference.
You're like walking on that balance between, like that sweetness and then that oakiness, right?
Yep.
So with the lower proofs, you're getting a little bit more of the sweetness out of the juice, but the higher proofs, you get a little more of the oak and a little more nuances.
And that brings us right to the top of the hour. So this was one really fun. I do want to thank everyone who tuned in for part 1 of Breaking the Seal, this custom blend of Penelope Bourbon. So again, we're going to take this offline. Nick, Eric, myself, and Blake are going to do our blends. I'm sure Danny already's done a lot of blends with these in his home. What's going to come out, and sure Mike did too. But then we're going to come back next Tuesday, 9:00 Eastern. We're going to be broadcasting in live in the Bourbonr Facebook group, Penelope Bourbon's Facebook group, Breaking Bourbon's Facebook group, and Breaking Bourbon's YouTube page. And we're going to do these blends at home, right? So we're going to come with our best blend. We're going to have the other 3 of us, right, who didn't blend at home. We're going to do those blends. So I'll come with mine, Nick and Eric will try, and Blake will try it out. Same with me with their blends, etc. And then we're gonna duke it out to see what we
digitally duke
it out for the best blend. But the main thing is, what we're going for here is not who's the best blender. What we're going for is what's the best blend all 4 of us can collectively come up with. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're going to be able to take away is something really unique, something really special. And it's going to be the first ever Penelope blend that's done by somebody else, right, with Danny and Mike on the line. So the pressure's on for us. I think the end result's going to be really great for those of you at home who are going to be able to get a chance to buy a bottle. We're super excited to the experience live with you all. So, as we start wrapping it up, Danny, Mike, just one more time, just tell us a little bit about Penelope for those at home who are just tuning in halfway through.
Yeah, so we're fairly new. We launched last March. Danny and I, we grew up together. We were neighbors our whole life, and we were just bourbon drinkers, bourbon enthusiasts. And when I found out my wife and I were having a baby girl, Penelope was her name, and I had bourbon on my mind, and it just really, it was just a light bulb went off. And so I called Danny immediately, and, a couple weeks later, we flew down to MGP, and, we've been working really hard at it for the last 2 years, and we got a long ways to go, but, we're excited to be working with you all, and excited. This is exciting for us too. So this is really cool. Thank you guys for having us.
Totally. You guys picked some good barrels, and excited to see what you guys do with them.
You guys picked great barrels. They're really.
This is going to be really good. And before Blake wraps up with his outro, do we have what the end result will be called? Will it just be called Penelope? Will it be called something else for those at home who want a bottle? What would they be looking for?
Since my daughter's name's Mary Kate, I was thinking we could do that as
We'll just put all the kids' names.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great story. My kids are like, Dad, have you done anything for us?
Yeah, my kids would love that. So, and I want to say this too. You know, we've kind of got to know Mike and Danny a lot better over the past, month or so. But geez, I think you guys reached out to us probably not long after you started, and it's been a lot of fun watching you guys grow and get to know you, and having these conversations over the past month or so. Just seeing talking with you guys, it's like regular people like us that have are doing this and following your dream and learning it as you go and sharing that and being open with it. And I think that's what's great. For a lot of people, they may not have heard about the Penelope brand yet, but I feel like it's that if you guys are engaging like this, on a constant, consistent basis, that's what people want, just learning this stuff. I mean, just from this blending, I've learned so much about blending that I didn't know. And I've been, in bourbon for, 7 years now in depth. And this is a new experience for me. So I just think it's fantastic that you guys are doing this. And, glad you're here. And I'm looking forward to that next step of actually trying to put this thing together. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. Right. And Blake, before you get sucked away by things at home, you just want to remind folks who you are and where they can find you?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Once again, thank you all for having me. This has been a lot of fun. So Danny, Mike, really appreciate it. We'll definitely be back next Tuesday. And the kids just came in. The quarantine really has us thrown off on bedtimes and everything. But no, so I'm Blake from Bourbonr, Bourbonr, and also Seelbach, where you'll be able to find this blend. That's Seelbachs. Thanks again, guys. Jordan, appreciate y'all. Eric and Nick, always great to get together with the Breaking guys.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Blake. And Eric, why don't you wrap it up for Breaking Bourbon?
Hey, thanks for watching. We're Breaking Bourbon. That's
right.
The best outro ever.
So, as Eric said, we're Breaking Bourbon. You can check us out, breakingbourbon.com. We are the leading bourbon review website online. Check us out for the latest reviews, news articles, and our release calendar that is updated daily. So if you're watching online, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you like every one of these folks here on Facebook. And next Tuesday, May 19th, 9 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you tune in. We're going to be doing the second part of this show. We'll be doing the blend on air, and it is going to be a lot of fun. So that's going to wrap it up for tonight. We really thank you all for coming, right? From Nick, Eric, and myself. Thank you so much from the Breaking Bourbon guys. Thanks, Penelope Bourbon. Thank you, Box and Bourbonr. For those at home, we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night. Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.